Welcome to the podcast. Here we explore ambition, well-being, and impact, and we dive deep under the surface level tactics so that you can build a freedom-focused business on your terms. Hi, I'm your host, Annalise Warren, an agency CEO, business strategist, and coach, as well as a wife and homeschooling, traveling mama of 4 little ones. Stay tuned for conversations with inspirational business leaders, as well as practical marketing and leadership strategies that you can action right away. So let's get into it. Nicole Trick Steinbach is the International Bravery Coach and host of the Celebrate Brave podcast. She helps women to build their bravery and coaches them towards their way of both stressing and working less. Now, Nicole coaches women to view all of our successes, our mistakes, and even our failures as equal stepping stones to building a brave life and career. And I had such a fabulous time chatting with Nicole. I really loved her perspective on everything that we spoke about, and I cannot wait for you to tune in. Please do let me know what you thought of the conversation, and I will connect you through to my conversation with Nicole. Please enjoy. Hello, Nicole. Welcome to the show.
I am so excited to join your community. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm really excited for this conversation as well. We've just had a little bit of a chat, and it's like, given me some insight about what we're going to talk about. So that's really exciting. So would you share with people, they've heard the official bio, but can you tell us what kind of work you do and the types of people that you work with right now in your work today?
Yeah. So I'm so sorry. Can you hear my dog? He is silent all the time, and suddenly he has lost his mind.
A tiny bit, but it's totally fine. We've got
totally
kids and
fine.
dogs
Okay.
and all the things happening
Good.
all the time. Yeah.
I mean, this is bravery, right? This is being a woman who runs her own business. Stuff happens and we get to pivot around it. So I do run my own business. It's a global business. I have 2 pillars to my business. The majority of the time we'll talk about the second, so I'll start with the first. By function, I'm a former director of communications and change management. So I support really cool organizations working on creative problems with change management, organizational change management. And that can range from everything from a 3-person startup to an organization that has over 100,000 full-time employees. So that's one piece of my company. The other piece, because I get very bored, and to quote one of my mentors, who is also Australian originally, Nicole is dangerous when she's bored. So the second part is that I coach women in technology because I am a woman in technology. I built my career in technology, and I help my clients so they come to me with the thing that's been normalized in technology, that women are stressed out, that we are overworking, and that we're underpaid in tech terms, not real terms, because everybody listening to this, we're paid just fine in tech also when we're underpaid for tech. But we want to fix that, right? We want parity. And so we work together in a one-on-one component. So we do individualized career coaching to build the skill of bravery, to build their functional skills, their interpersonal skills. And the 3 outcomes are the same, and they are in this order. Number 1, we lower the stress. Stressed out people do not get promotions. They don't get hired, and they don't get those stretch roles and significant pay increases. There's a ton of research out there. Brene Brown has some of it. The second step is that they work less. They stop overproducing. So they do their job, and they do only their job, and they do it really well. And then the third thing is that they begin to earn more. It's when we are in balance emotionally more often than not, and doing our jobs really well and telling people about it. That's when those opportunities come in, when we ask for them and we get them, etc. And so we do all of that with the skill of bravery. And my clients are all over the world. The vast majority of them are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Although my youngest client was 24, I believe, 23, 24, and my oldest was in her 70s, which made me so just like, it was such an amazing exchange. So yeah, so that's what I do. Those are the services that I bring into the world. And I kind of think I'm super lucky because I got to design this after a very demanding executive career with tons of travel and a schedule that felt like, yes, I had boundaries and yes, I was in control, but I often felt like it was conflict driven to make sure that I was in that control. Yeah.
So what was the final thing that made you make that decision?
Oh gosh. Okay. So one of the concepts that I believe in is 2% change to transformation, right? So 2% shifts into transformation. So holistically, the whole process took a little bit more than 2 years. It started with a strategy change, and I just couldn't see myself in the strategy. And so I tried to make that work. Then I hit the market and I was getting offers that I was finding silly reasons, and I genuinely mean this, silly reasons to turn down. And then I turned to my board of advisors and I was like, I just don't know what's going on. Like, I don't really want to stay here because I can't find myself in the strategy, but I also can't find the next right thing. And one of my mentors said to me, Nicole, you are the boss. You need to take your brilliance for however long and do that in your own way and in a way that also like supports my family, because I have 2 neurodiverse children as well. And so there was just an extensive process of getting more clear. And now here's my framework for bravery. There's 3 parts. Clarity. So it took me a long time to get clear. I know what I don't want, but I don't know what I want, right? Then I went into momentum, and momentum in the Build Your Brave framework is feeling and doing. Probably every single person listening to us is a doer, at least my space.
We're naturally doers. We're definitely
all
naturally
do,
doers. Yeah.
right? And we need to feel as well. So we need to feel and do, right? So that's the momentum piece. And then accountability, which is choosing who I wanted to become. I wanted to be a present parent. I wanted to be a parent who had energy. I wanted to be a parent who was also continuing to create wealth, right? And then becoming that person. So it's clarity, momentum, and accountability. And overall, it took me about 2 years to actually go from not this to, oh Lord, I'm announcing.
That's fun and terrifying. And
Yes, so true.
so what does bravery mean to you? Oh my gosh, this sunrise is like actually
So beautiful.
distractingly gorgeous. Can I
Oh,
just
let me see from
hang on. I
oh,
don't know if you can see.
I can. It's
It's
oranges and
like,
blues,
oh my
violets.
goodness. Sorry, everyone.
Wow.
It's like whole sky.
That makes me think of our honeymoon in New Zealand. We had a few times that we woke up at the Bay of Islands to these strong oranges and strong purples that you don't really see so much. You definitely don't see it in Germany where we were living at the time. That's for sure.
I'm sorry to get us sidetracked.
No, I love it. I love it.
We were talking about bravery.
Absolutely. So what does bravery mean to me? Right. So bravery to me is inclusive of what we've been taught, rushing into burning buildings, slamming our fist on the table and winning an argument, or, standing up in a protest with a sign and yelling. Like, those things are brave as well. But so are the small moments when you have vacation planned and your executive is demanding that you cancel it and you say no. And so is the moment when the doctor says, I have news and it's going to be hard to hear. And you say, whew, let me get my sister on the phone, right? That's really brave to interrupt an expert. So is noticing that it seems like your male colleague is in a different tax bracket. So you knockety knock and say, hey, can we have a private conversation? I think we might have a pay disparity. Are you open to talking to me about that? Right? There's so many moments where there's a fear, there's a constriction, There's an insecurity, because that's the moment where your courage, where your bravery is required. And it's unique to every single person, right? And so that's what I'm trying to bring to my clients, and also on my podcast and through the various speaking, like getting to talk to you right now, right? Is those moments of trepidation. For my middle schooler, it's that moment of, I guess I could text someone and see if I'm cool enough to hang out with. I mean, obviously he's cool. I mean, his mom will hang out with him whenever, but like for a middle schooler, that's a moment of brave, right? Defining that for ourselves, clarity, feeling the trepidation, the fear, the insecurity, feeling the hope, right? The optimism, the curiosity, and then accountability, actually doing it. Now notice, everyone, because I recently was on a podcast, and all the questions that came back to the podcast host was like, but how do you control the outcome of bravery? Yeah, you don't, right? So like I said, I had a client who needed to say to a doctor, hey, wait 1 second, I need to get my sister on the phone. And the doctor just kept talking, because we don't control other people. But what you can control is who you are in every situation. And that's also brave.
Yeah. So how do you talk to your clients around being brave, but not being reckless? If I'm just going to be brave, how do we?
Can you send me a few people, women in tech, who are reckless? Because I'd love to have an answer to that question. I have yet. When a woman has said to me, whether she was an entrepreneur, okay, that's not true. I actually just thought of 2 examples of people, but not in tech, people that I've met who I'm like, well, you're blowing your life up again. Why? Oh, you don't know. Okay, babes, therapy. Okay, therapy. Therapy is something, like something's going on where you're blowing up your life again, right? But I genuinely, and I've been coaching for over 10 years, have never experienced a reckless woman in tech. Never. And when a woman says to me, I think I'm overconfident, I know that she might be getting to confident when she asks for what she wants. But she has the belief that she's overconfident, or that she's reckless, or she's asking for too much, or she talks too much, or she does too much, because the men around her are telling her all of those lies. And so it's time for her to change the people around her the vast majority of the time.
And you talk about this as being a skill anyone can learn, right?
Anyone can learn. I actually have a male client. He's not active right now, but he comes in and out. He was one of the very first people I coached as part of my executive career while I was still employed. And he comes in and out. And one of his moments of building bravery, and I say moment, but it was actually a significant phase, was allowing that his daughter's Black husband in the United States, so he's a white American, daughter is a white American, daughter's husband is a Black American, that his experience was different because of his racial identity. Right? So that was really hard. It was very threatening for him to acknowledge that at least this country is not a meritocracy. We are a class structure. So it is something that anyone can build in any part of life, because that client then went on to fundamentally change his senior executive line, because he finally was able to see and work through the feelings that the reason his team was all white was because that's who he felt comfortable with, because it's not a meritocracy. It's a class system that's also overimposed on a racial system. So that's an example of bravery that I would guess 95% of the people wouldn't consider a moment of brave that we can start in any part of our lives and then bring into our careers.
Yeah, definitely. And it's all going to start with that awareness clarity piece, right? Because how do we even begin to change something that we're not aware of?
Yeah. Yes. And when we first started talking to this, His not this definition of clarity was, I've always been close to my daughters. He has multiple daughters. Always had wonderful relationships. For the first time in my life, my daughter doesn't want to spend time with me. Not this. And
It's a bit of a
then we
stab,
began.
isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a big
Yeah.
stab.
Absolutely. It was just a beautiful, having worked with him for, I think probably over a decade at this point, on and on, off and on, right? Mostly off, some on. It's just an example of how those 2% shifts lead to dramatic transformation.
Can you talk a little bit more about that with the 2% shifts and give some other examples kind of in
Absolutely.
real life scenario? Like what might that actually look like? Because we can start small if we're really not feeling brave, right?
Oh, 100%. Most of my clients do. So I'd actually like to tell on one of my clients, and she's given me permission to do so. Not with her name, not with her employer, but she has given me permission to share her story when it fits. So this client is a hardware engineer, already rare, right? Women in technology, less than 30%. And then hardware, even fewer women, right? And my client shows up in very feminine energy. She wears beautiful clothing. She has the most decorative, artistic nails ever. And when I say artistic, I mean an actual artist comes over and paints them with scenes from movies and art and, different themes that are going on around the world. And she was in a situation in a very, let's say, very high status program. You can tell I'm trying to be very careful here, but device that we all are familiar with at a company that we all know, right? And a very rare role, very hard to get. But every single time she opened her mouth, every time she was spoken over. And so the first 2% shift was allowing herself to acknowledge that was happening. I think for a couple of weeks we've been working together for almost 3 years at this point. But at the very beginning, what she did was she wrote down, it's like a little mark, I think in an electronic tablet. I was speaking, I was interrupted, I was spoken over. And she just kept a running tally of how often this was happening. That's a 2% shift. Then there was the 2% shift of choosing not to be silenced because someone else is speaking over me. Then the 2% shift of having the crucial conversation. Now, in the case of this client, it totally did not go in any way that any rational person would respond. She had this, we practiced, a crucial conversation or a conflict conversation. She opened it and her boss lost his mind. There was yelling, name calling, blame. It turned out that she was secretly on a PIP, which is against the law. PIP is a performance improvement plan. It's against the law to do that to people. It just blew up, right? And that became a significant transformational moment where she got to decide, am I going to be the person who's talked over, dismissed, shut down, yelled at, called names, etc., or am I going to be the person who says, no, thank you? And because her skills are so incredibly elevated, I mean, she's very young and she's already on a board of trustees in her function. She pretty darn quickly got another offer and transitioned her entire career into this new growth area. So those are some examples of the 2% that lead to transformational change. Yeah.
What a story. My goodness.
Yeah. A lot of my clients come to me in stressed out, like they're stressed out, or they just realize they're underpaid and they don't know what to do next because it's all their fault. And then we actually get in there and we realize very quickly it's frequently, yes, accountability, they have a role to play, but frequently they need to, as Annie Duke says, quit. She has an amazing book. This is a plug, Quit by Annie Duke. So often we've been conditioned, and this is especially true. I'm a white woman from the United States. I have a Christian background. I speak English as my first language. but I've been conditioned to stay. I've been conditioned to internalize things. And very, very frequently, and even more with intersectional identities, that is true, but we need to flip that on its head. This place, I'm not going to make it bad, but it's not for me now.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah. And it can be really brave, like in a business context, when you're the boss and you started it, to decide to burn some things down or to prune a little bit.
Tell me that story. I heard your episode about the last 5 years. Talk about taking a fire to your business a few times, my friend.
It's all right. It's all worth it. But I think we all do that, right? Like, and in the business context, it's really brave to launch a new offer. It's really brave to put yourself out there on social media. It's really brave to invite people to a sales call. It's like, I think we just downplay it because it's what we do, but it's like the 1% crazies that have a business. It's such a small percentage, and you have to be a little kind of, of a special breed to be able to,
I agree.
to do that.
I agree. I believe it was in February 2023, those macro global, I think it was after Davos, actually, 2023. And I was reading the report because I got to support a company going into Davos one time, and I just got fascinated with how the global elite come together and tell each other how amazing they are for a few days. I just think that's just fascinating. I'm not sure that I would enjoy going somewhere but anyways, back to the point, Nicole. See, there's brave. Like, come back.
Yeah.
And so in their report, and I'm probably going to get some of the numbers wrong, so I apologize, but it was generally speaking, of every 100 companies that had been started after 2016 that were under 10 million in annual revenue, they anticipated globally that one would still be here in spring of 2025.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure those are the numbers. And if those aren't the numbers, it's very close to being those numbers. And I remember reading those and going, well, thank goodness I am stubborn.
Seriously.
Because I don't know how it's been for your region and your niche, but 2023 has been the worst year for tech, period. Right.
For tech,
and women in tech have been 65% more likely to be impacted than men. So my core audience, I mean, there's so much fear, there's so much insecurity. It's like this exact moment is where I have to be brave to put out additional offers. I have to be brave to reach out to people. I have to be brave to allow people to just grieve.
Yeah, I have a couple of clients who work in that space. I have a client who coaches women in corporate, so that includes, of course, women in tech. Yes. And I also do work for a non-for-profit called Career Connectors out of Arizona, and of course, they help people who have been laid off to get jobs, and they connect companies with people who are looking for jobs. And so, of course, this last, year has, they've been able to do some really great work in the space, but I've been quite, familiar with what's going on in the States, even though I'm so far away.
Yeah.
But,
and for tech, at least, it's global. I mean, at Germany, where I built my career, significant percentage-wise, significant layoffs. Even in Singapore, which is, I mean,
we're in a bubble down here, Nicole. We just get like the ripple has like died off such a lot by the time it comes across the pond, which is a good thing and a bad thing.
I actually had an employee in Sydney for a hot second, maybe like nine months or something, very short period of time, because they actually were not appropriate in my space. They were supposed to be somewhere else, but we couldn't get the cost centers to work out for a while. And one time I said to her, after some significant news had been shared in all hands, I said, is there anything that you want to say about like that? Are you feeling okay? Like, do you have any concerns or questions I might be able to support you with? And she goes, no, I'm in Australia. And I was like, I don't understand. And so she just like explained it to me. It's like, for you guys, it's a huge wave, but by the time it gets to us, it's just, it's
The
coming onto
ripple.
the shore and then it
is.
drops back. And yeah.
I feel like, yeah, I'm more aware because I work with clients in the US. But in terms of like what goes on the ground here, they're very different realities, like worlds apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yeah, totally.
So we're kind of in a little bubble. in a nice little bubble at the bottom of the world. It's okay. Not quite like that. You mentioned a book.
Yes.
And you also told me that you read like a lot. How do you read so much? And what do you read?
Oh, heavens. I read everything. So the full name of the book is Quit: The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away. It's by Annie Duke. I cannot recommend this book enough. It's just truly remarkable. How do I find time to read? So that's a really interesting question. I feel like when I hear that other people knit, like, how do you find time for that? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? I knit. Or when I live in Colorado, right? So if people tell me that they go mountain biking 3 times a week, I'm like, how do you find time for that? I am. So I read. I read a lot. I always have. And in fact,
but like 2 books a week or something, like a lot.
Yeah. I'm usually doing, I think right now I'm doing 8 books in parallel. Now, one of those books I've already been reading for a year because it's a healing book. It's called My Grandmother's Hands, Healing Racial Trauma. So I've been working on that for a year, right? But then other books, like I just finished Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children, and I ripped through 6 of those books, I think, in 2 weeks. It's just how I am. I have to say, I started reading when I was around 4 years old. I went to kindergarten when I was 4 years old, and I read excruciatingly fast for other people. And I listen to almost everything at 2x, but they keep telling me I don't have ADHD. So I don't know what to say about that, but like, I listen to everything sped up and I read very, very quickly. And one of my kids does that as well.
So do you read, like, is it everything? It's fiction, it's nonfiction, it's...
Yeah. I won't read horror. I'm not interested in any more Nazi stories that don't reflect on the American Jim Crow that inspired nationalism, like the National Socialist rules and regulations. But other than that, I don't really like smut either. I don't know. I get all embarrassed and all flushed, and then everyone knows what I'm reading. I honor those women who are like just listening to, the hottest new Bridgerton book, and they just look totally calm because I am red as a tomato and I'm smiling and I'm like pulling my little shoulders forward. Like, I just honor women who can pull that off. I am not one of them.
Poker face.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's one of those things where so I grew up really poor. I actually, now that I've had the chance to reflect on that question, I grew up really poor. My mom had me, my father took off for a while. He ended up coming back. And there was just a lot of things that weren't available to me, like healthcare. And so libraries are free in the United States. And my mother would take me there, and I had this specific bag. I was a single child until I was about 4.5. And my mom would take me there, and I got to choose anything. And there are so many things that my mom did exceptionally well as a single mom. And one of them was, if I understood it, I could read it. Nothing was off limits, right? And so I think that really drove the habit of reading, the desire to read, and also then later led to just my very deep empathy and compassion for other people's choices, because I've probably read either a nonfiction or a fiction book about people who make choices that maybe don't make sense to me, but I at least have the opportunity to reflect on how they got there. So I think that's more, it's more like this desire for curiosity and connection with people. Another thing is about reading and also podcasts for me is I genuinely feel that those people wrote that book for me or made that podcast for me. So like I will say to people without reflection, Glennon Doyle was telling me the other day. No, she wasn't. It was on her podcast. Abby Wambach told me in her book, and people are like, Nicole, you're so funny. But I really allow myself to get just sucked into and soaked into other people's perspectives, and then use critical thinking to decide that which is for me and that which is not.
Yeah, I love that critical thinking piece. And it's only something I've done in the last couple of years is read books that I maybe don't agree with. It took me a long time, but that's actually really important to be able to read it and consider and to maybe change your thought. Like otherwise, how do we grow?
Yeah. I 1000% agree with that. Now, I don't buy the books, but for example, there's been a recent president who we shall not name that was a bit of a mess and has written, quote unquote, had written 3 books. And so I read them. Like, what is the thought process of this human being? I read them. Or, we have in the United States, a lot of the leadership books are actually militaristic because it's a very militaristic society. And I read them to see, okay, what is it that this organization or this person thinks is of value? There's a huge name brand. We all have their products in our house, and they have every single manager has to prove that they've written this book that's written by a Navy SEAL. I'm not going to say the name because I really don't like the book, but it is so much kill hunt kind of leadership. You have to go to the extremes and be exhausted and all of these things. And I make sure that I read those types of books so that I can understand where people are coming from and can better connect if they're open to connect. If they're not open to connect, I don't need to waste my time.
Yeah, that must really be amazing in terms of your own leadership and your own coaching and all of that, and inform lots of things, as well as being able to understand the decisions people make and have the empathy and all of that. So amazing.
I still mess up a lot, to be very clear. I'm still quite judgmental. I'm a strong J in that Myers-Briggs thing. The J is there.
But yeah. That's okay. Again, awareness, right? Coming back.
Exactly.
We might not be able to control the original impulse, but we can thoughtfully then be like, okay, like my husband, we've got this rule when I'm like ranting and raving. He's like, okay, like a code word. I'm like, okay, all right, you're right.
I love that.
Because some things are just really innate. Anyway.
Yeah.
Next topic. Talk to me about the accountability piece.
Oh, yeah. So I am not a business coach. I want to make that very clear to everyone, right? I'm not a business coach. I don't coach people on their businesses. I am a business owner, and I've been in this space for 5 years. And then I was in leadership program, leadership change management leadership for, I don't know, a decade before that. So a trend that I think that we can really choose to destroy, redirect, right, in our spaces is all around accountability. So if accountability, according to the definition, is to, of, and for self. So it is what you have agreed to yourself, for yourself, of yourself, and with yourself. Then as business owners, we have this beautiful opportunity to decide what we're going to do, to design our jobs, to design our services and our offerings. And yes, that's very brave and very uncomfortable, right? But we have that. That's our opportunity. We've made that choice. The other side of the pendulum is that we have to hold ourselves to what we've decided and not more. One of the things that I see particularly women do is they decide on something and then they overproduce. I see this a lot with virtual assistants or marketing experts or copywriters, right? They're getting paid to do XYZ, and the person paying them realizes they have an additional skill. And instead of saying, hey, this is the business I've crafted, this is what I charge, this is the service, they begin to overproduce, right? So that's the one side. And then the other side is whatever it is that you've said you're going to do, be accountable to that. So I think the easiest, most famous example is business coaches who say they run a group program and then don't show up. They send other people who they're paying $20 an hour for or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also those nuances, right? So one of the things that I do is one of the things people can do when they work with me is 2 months long. Well, if a kid gets sick, like really sick, like for example, my daughter had a ski accident, so I was out for 3 weeks. I am then going to extend everything by 3 weeks, right? So it's like this accountability is on both sides. And if you're employed, maybe your job is set for you, but you made the responsibility that you were going to do that job. You signed on that line, right? So you're going to do only that job that you signed on the line, right? And when you desire to grow, you're going to take it upon yourself to bravely get clear about what you don't want, what you do want, feel and act, right? Network, do your resume, link, all the things, and become the person that you want to be.
Yeah, I think that's really important to distinguish the integrity as integrity to self, because I think you ask anyone, like, do you have an integrity? They're like, yeah. And most people do. Most people, my 3-year-old's waking up. I just had this Bob from the other end of the house. He may come, or hopefully husband will hear him and pick him up. Sneezing like 100 times. Sorry, distracted. So with integrity, I think, yeah, a lot of people will honor the things that they tell other people that they're going to do. But a lot of us do not honor what we tell ourselves we're going to do, whether that's like, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week, or I'm going to stop work at 5 o'clock, or I'm going to, next time I'm going to double my prices, or like whatever it is. I think that promises to ourselves are actually really equal, or to at least equal to the promises we make to other people, but we're really bad at keeping them a lot of the time.
Yeah. So a lot of my clients realize that those promises that they're not keeping to themselves, it's either from a question of self-worth or discomfort, which leads to bravery. More frequently, it's that you should stop work at 5. But what happens with people who are the opposite of, I'm up at 5:15. I have slept in if it's 5:45 and I am not awake. Set me on any time zone, and within a week, I'm waking up at 5:15 in the morning, latest, right? But for the people who start to bloom in the afternoon and evening, but they should stop at 5, that's not you've made a promise to yourself, or you've made an agreement with yourself that actually isn't for you. That's a really important question to ask around accountability. Is this for me? Or is this because, like in doubling your prices, is it because you were told that that's how you're supposed to run your business? And if the answer is yes, somebody told me I should double my prices, then you need to do more mindset work. You need to do more value, because perhaps that advice, that recommendation is correct, but you're not ready for it yet. So you have to get yourself ready to then promise it to you, for you, of you, with yourself. And then the likelihood that you follow through is real. I had a client who was working, oh my God, I don't even know, well over 60 hours a week. A lot of it was billable, so we could see how much she was actually working, but she had been passed over for promotion, I think twice, even though her billable was very, very high, because she was so stressed out. Stressed out people do not get promoted, right? And we just decided, you know what? For this entire month, work whenever you want to, work all the time. That's your promise to yourself. You will set no shoulds onto your calendar. Work whenever you want. She actually worked significantly less. I think she got herself down to like 50 hours or something.
Wow.
Right? Amazing. Like, we got to check that we're actually making promises to ourselves that are really for and with ourselves.
How do you speak to your clients around that discovery process and that mindset work?
Yeah. So I have this concept, and I actually don't think that I made that it is mine. I think that it's like shared wisdom from many of my own coaches, from my meditation practice, etc. But what I really encourage them to do is choose, what do you believe now? And I encourage people who've never done mindset work or have only done mindset work that doesn't work for them to basically just vomit it all out. For some of my clients, it's written down. For others, especially my neurodiverse clients, it's really speaking it out, either to a recorder or to someone else who's taking the notes down. And just let it all go. Like, I'm an awesome dog mom. I struggle as a kid mom, right? I frequently am worried about money. I love money. Like, let it all out. And then choose one or two that you want to strengthen. We need to allow ourselves to celebrate where we're good. And I think that's one piece of mindset that a lot of people fail to gift themselves. It's like, the things you believe about yourself and your life and your skills that are awesome. Please spend some time on that. Please don't just spend time on stuff that you don't like about yourself, but then also, choose one or two that you would like to shift. So you know what you want to shift. Then think way in the future. Depending on how stressed out my clients are and how they respond to initial questions, we'll either go 6 months in the future, all the way to 30 years in the future. Sometimes people are so stressed out they can't think midterm or short term, but they can think long term. And we identify, what do you want to be true about you? And then we create a ladder of thoughts. I like to think about it as stepping stones.
Yeah.
And the mountains, right? You're crossing a beautiful mountain river, and there are all of these steps. So the whole process is beautiful. We're not going from Hades into heaven. It's beautiful all the way through, which also I think a lot of people could benefit from. And maybe the first one is like, I have a client right now who's working on, if I'm not stressed, I'm not doing my job well. Like, that's a current belief that she has. And so the next step may be, sometimes I can have less stress and still do my job well. Right? And then the next step could be, often I have less stress, right? And like, you can move yourself that way.
Yeah.
And actually, I can not be in stress and do my job well. That's her end goal. That's where she wants to be in a few months.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like, having young kids, having a business, like the whole pandemic thing, like for a while there, life was just like, always felt quite tense. And I'm like, hang on, this is life. Like, every moment we need to enjoy this part, not just, oh, we're waiting until this thing happens. No, actually.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I love that the whole way should be beautiful, because I agree. Like, we could, get hit by a bus tomorrow, or like whatever, just keep living this life and end up at 80 and be like, oh, like I wasted it, or oh, like why was I so I think life is so precious, and sometimes we get too busy, or like too much looking down and all of the things we've got to do and doing the things, that we forget that how precious and fleeting it is.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And whatever is our homeostasis is going to be where we land, regardless of what's on the outside. And the most extreme example I have ever had, a client of mine, speaking of layoffs and things, a client of mine delivered product. The product instantly was 10 million plus value and worth. And the whole team got stock options because she was the executive. She got an instant stock transfer. So it didn't need to get better and to vest. The stock just instant transfer. $100,000. $100,000. Okay. I don't know about you. That's big money for me. Okay. $100,000. We celebrated, but she was only happy about it for about 2 days. Right. And then it was back into the grind, back into the grind, back into the grind. Less than a quarter later, the entire division got cut, laid off instantly from one moment to the next because the product was out. They wanted to save money, jack up their shareholder. They were all gone. And she felt miserable for about 2 days. And then it was back into the grind, back into the grind, back into the grind, right? So whatever is our homeostasis, regardless if it's $100,000 in stock, we're getting laid off, we are going to come back to our homeostasis. And we get to decide what that is over time. And if you struggle, dear gentle listener, as opposed to reader, but dear gentle listener, if you struggle with shifting your homeostasis, please talk to a qualified, supervised therapist, because that is deep work of psyche and core beliefs. But you can change it. You absolutely can change it.
You can. You totally can. 2% shifts, right?
That's
you
right.
Can move from anywhere to anywhere.
That is totally correct.
Yeah. Oh, Nicole, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close out today?
Yeah, well, I think one thing that I would really encourage your listener, first of all, I forgot that I actually have the accountability triangle that's all about reducing your work by building your personal accountability. It's on my website. It's free. There's a video and a workbook. I'll send you the link. I don't exactly know where it is, but I'll send it to you and you can put it in the show notes. And I've actually had quite a number of my entrepreneur sisters utilize it, and it's really helped them. So I'll send that to you.
We'll put it in the show notes. So look out for that.
Thank you. But the last thing that I really want to say is I treasure your episode specifically about, I think it was around 200 episodes. You were celebrating the last 5 years of growth, and you were sharing your story about being at your in-laws and your husband and these things. And then at one point in the story, you said, this is where for most people the story starts. This is where people know. And I want to encourage everyone, go listen to that, because we think we know each other's stories, but we very frequently do not. And I would even offer, listen to that episode and then take, 20 minutes and make your own episode. You don't have to publish it anywhere, right? But like, first I did this, then I did this, then I did this, and this is what I created. And these were the ups and these were the downs, because you are more awesome and more brave than you can ever believe. So please remind yourself of that. Make your own episode.
That's so cool. I love it. And then come and tell me in the DMs, because I'm really interested too. Like, people's stories. I think, again, we're so often wrapped up in our own bubbles, we forget to or we don't realize how awesome the people around us are. Like, I've met a lot of new people recently, and they're all so cool. Like, there's so many cool people doing cool things, and I love hearing about it. So tell me. And even if you don't think it's cool because it's your normal, I'm sure it's really cool. So tell me.
Exactly.
Nicole, thank you. This has been such an honor, such a wonderful start to my day, having this conversation. And I'm going to now go for a swim and think about bravery.
Oh, I love that. And I'm going to go have dinner. Thank you so much for welcoming.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What's the best place for people to get in touch with you?
Okay, so the best place to connect with me on social is definitely LinkedIn, because I support women in tech. That's where I'm active. But my email is the most fun, because then we get to actually talk to each other. We get to do things like human and communicate, which is Nicole@tricksteinbach.com. So just reach out to me. I love hearing from people.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And have a wonderful evening, Nicole. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. 2 things before you go. If you have loved this episode, please grab your phone to subscribe and review the show. And if you are ready to make a power move in your business, book a free strategy call with me, and you will walk away with a 3-step action plan and a new fire in your belly. Book your call at annalisewarren.com/consult. The link is in the show notes. Have a fabulous week.